this did not come from an intern. This came from Jerry Jones, or probably his longtime PR guru, Rich Dalrymple. The Cowboys, yes, the Dallas Cowboys, on their Twitter account. It's not a setback. It's not a reason to worry, but Dak Prescott is planning on getting another MRI. That didn't come from an intern. That was carefully carved out. Okay. Translation. Leg injury, long rehab, overcompensates, throwing shoulder sore, gets an MRI. Comes off the field, right? Couple days, few days. Goes back, couple days of throwing, and why would you get a second MRI? Something's not quite right. It's not doom, it's not gloom, but Joe Burrow had an equally ugly leg injury. He hasn't had any MRIs. So 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, one has had an MRI, Dak. One has had 2 MRIs, Dak. Fresh off a $40 million contract. Now, Stephen Jones today is saying it's overrated. It's no big deal, but you watch Hard Knocks, first episode, Jerry Jones talking to trainers with the Rangers and the Yankees. Nothing is everything. Everything is something. And I think this is and has become an incredibly Dak-reliant team. That's why this is important. I said this yesterday. What do the Seattle Seahawks do well? Russell Wilson scores touchdowns. What else do they do well right now? Not a lot. Let me ask you, with the Dallas Cowboys, increasingly, they're putting Dak front and center because he's the emotional leader. He's the physical leader. He's the production leader. This is not like Kyle Shanahan's offense. You know, this is not the early Brady with the Patriots, Dilfer Flacco with the Ravens, where the defense felt like it led the way. This has become a very quarterback-reliant franchise. I even think the Kansas City Chiefs could win half their games without Mahomes because of the coaching, the O-line rebuild, the skill people. They wouldn't win the Super Bowl. I think Dallas is totally Dak dependent now. Last year, defense 23rd, rushing 17th, pass rush 20th, coaching, I'll be kind, C-, felt like a D+. What do they do well? Dak's productive. That's it. He goes to the microphone, A+. Productivity, very good. And I'm not picking on Dallas. I said this about my hometown Seahawks. What do they do well? Their drafting's weird. 2 first-rounders and a third and a player for Jamal Adams, who I love, but that's a lot. Now they're kind of trapped. Now guys aren't practicing. They're holding out. This is now a very Dak-reliant franchise. And oh, by the way, the Eagles are a tire fire, but Washington and New York are solid and getting better. Giants played very well, won 5 of their last 8 last year. Washington, end of the year, played very well. Gave the Buccaneers everything they could handle with Taylor Heineke at quarterback. So this division is not as bad as it was at the beginning of last year. It's a pretty interesting division. But with Dallas now, this has become a very Dak-reliant franchise. He's the guy you put at the podium. He's the emotional leader. I mean, you saw last year, there were questions about Dallas's defense. When Dak left, it was like, man, they're not playing hard. They're not prepared. And there was no Dak around. It was Andy Dalton. Who do you rely on when things go sideways? This is still not a very good defense with an anemic pass rush, hit and miss running the football. Coaching is ad. Albert Breer talked about this yesterday. You watch Hard Knocks. It's pretty clear now who runs the franchise. It's not Mike McCarthy. So Dak Prescott, a second MRI. All right, so I want to shift gears to tonight. We have some football games tonight. And Cam Newton and Mac Jones reportedly, both Cam and Mac Jones reportedly will play for the New England Patriots tonight at Foxborough. And here's what I think is interesting. So Tom Brady played in New England for about 20 years, right? Was it 20, 21, 19, something like that, 20 years. And for 15, he was the emotional, physical leader of the franchise. But they always struggled to give him credit as he took pay cuts, right? There was a moment a couple years ago where Belichick gave him the team ball, and it literally, visually, optically looked uncomfortable. They always struggled. It was always about the system, the genius of previously fired Bill Belichick, who I still think's, the best coach in NFL history. So Brady leaves, and immediately, almost bizarrely, the compliments started flowing for Cam Newton. What a leader. He's picked up this offense. He is sensational. Cam has never had back-to-back winning seasons. They draft Mac Jones. The Mac Jones comments, despite the fact he wears 50 and looks like a ball boy half the time. Oh, my God, he is whizzing the ball. He is an unbelievable talent. If you work for a company for 20 years and you got him 6 rings, number 1 in merchandise sales, you got him on Sunday Night Football, CBS Game of the Week, almost every Sunday they were the marquee game for a network or the league. For 20 years, you doubled the owner's net worth. Belichick had been fired. You helped make him the winningest coach. You couldn't get compliments. Then you leave, and the next 2 guys, one that's never had back-to-back winning seasons, and a kid who was the 4th quarterback taken this year, wasn't it? Like 4th quarterback of the 5. Everybody was one. Oh, he was the 5th. My bad. The 5th. Oh, he's great. You can't believe how good he is. Oh, he's so smart. He's like Einstein. Elon Musk with a helmet. It's unbelievable. This is why I believe Tom Brady's not going to play for Tampa 1 year, not 2 years, not 3 years, not 4. Tom Brady, as long as he thinks he can win a Super Bowl, is just going to keep playing. He's going to say, honey, Giselle, just 1 more year. Tom Brady's got a chip on his shoulder from being drafted in the 6th round. He's still got that. But I think it is really funny. Put yourself in Brady's shoes. You work at a company for 20 years, and for like 16 to 17 of it, you carry him. Your boss is now called a genius, although he was fired in his current job, his previous job. He was fired in his previous job, called grumpy, hard to deal with, and was in big trouble. You arrive, and suddenly 17 years later, 18 years later, that boss who had been fired, the greatest boss of all time, you take pay cuts, they don't compliment you, you leave, and the next 2 guys who aren't close to you, oh, they're geniuses. They're Mac Jones and Cam Newton. Folks, that's all this is doing. All these, you don't think Tom Brady's watching that and thinking Mac Jones is brilliant, Cam Newton's a great leader? I mean, just think about this, what was around Brady. Look at what is left. Belichick, who's great, but was fired in his previous job. Matt Patricia is now an advisor, disaster as a head coach. The offensive coordinator is Josh McDaniels, who was a disaster as a head coach. And the defensive coordinator, there really is none, although I do think Belichick's son has some role there. All right. And they're not really a winning team now. And they're clearly not close to Buffalo, who was 13-3 and clearly got better in the offseason. So, you know what? When your old company still can't acknowledge it, struggled for years, you took everybody in that organization from owner to coach to lineman to a completely different level, and they can't stop talking about the people who have replaced you. That's why Tom's just going to stay in Tampa, and he's just going to keep the foot on the gas, and it's just jet fuel. Every time I hear a Mac Jones or a Cam compliment, I know Brady looks at that and just goes, keep chirping, keep talking. We know he's got a chip on being drafted in the 6th round. So tonight we get our first view of the brilliant Mac Jones. It's going to be unbelievable. Who do they play? The Houston Texans? Oh, Washington. Well, Washington's got a good defensive front. Maybe he won't be great. We'll see how he runs around when under pressure. All right, so New England and Washington. Good stuff today. Derek, speaking of playing a long time. That's why I say with Brady, and I made a rule a few years ago. I said, I'm not going to guess when Brady's going to retire. But I do believe Tom's just going to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing and keep playing. He's just going to keep burying New England and proving them wrong because they just can't acknowledge he changed everybody's life in that building. I'm done hearing about Cam and Mac Jones. I'm done. Do something. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.